What is up, L's and G's? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I want to make a video talking about the new Shaddoll monsters and how much better they actually make Shaddolls going forward in the competitive format, because we're kind of in an interesting spot. Like, generally we don't get support for decks that are already considered really good competitive decks, because Konami's just under the thought process most likely of like, why make this deck better when it's already really good? We're just going to force ourselves to ban cards later on. But we do have a deck right now, Shaddolls, that is a very good option, and we have Konami making 2 new cards for them, and they're nice cards. So today I'm going to be talking about what the cards do, how they help the deck, and if I think they're really going to allow the deck to climb even higher in the competitive format. Because right now, Shaddolls are in an interesting place where they're like, we're still fairly new into this format, so people are still trying to figure out, aside from Dragon Link being obviously tier 1, we've got a bunch of decks, you know, Eldritch variants, and this deck, and Dogmatica Invoked, and Bird Up. People are trying to figure out whether those decks are tier 1, tier 1.5, or tier 2. They're at worst tier 2, so they're all some good options for sure. People just aren't sure if they're really all the way in there, like tier 1. And Shaddolls falls right into that category. So let's start off with Nefshaddoll Genius. This is probably the one I like more. He's really cool. So his first effect is his flip effect, where you can target one Shaddolls monster you control on flip. That face-up monster is unaffected by monster effects this turn, except its own. I don't expect this effect to come up very often. I mean, when is it? Like on your opponent's turn, I guess. Flip this, target a Winda, so that like it makes it harder for your opponent to out the Winda. But Winda's killable by battle. It's already immune to card destruction. So I don't know. It's like, it's a weird, like, I don't see this effect being that good, but who knows? Maybe there are weird niche interactions in the format that could be good, but that's the lesser of the 2 effects by far. The better effect says, if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you could target one effect monster on the field. Neither player can activate that target's effects on the field this turn. And you can only use one of its effects once per turn, and only that turn, so you cannot use both. Just remember that. So this second effect is much, much better, and I think it's something that I've been personally waiting for Shaddolls to get for a long while. We have stuff like Ariel, which is Graveyard Disruption, and that's great. But Graveyard Disruption is like pretty good versus graveyard decks, which are generally mid-range decks, not necessarily combo decks. It can be okay versus certain combo decks, but it's usually not enough to like full-on stop a combo deck from comboing. And so it's a nice disruption, but it's like, okay. And we have Shaddolls Dragon, which is great versus back row decks, but like whatever. I mean, like, it's more utility than a disruption. So I think getting a card like this is really, really nice, and I think this becomes an automatic at least 1 of, maybe even 2 of in certain variants. But I really think it's a much needed disruption that the deck doesn't really have. The deck, I guess App Cologne gives you disruption of monsters on the field, but you have to already be able to fuse for that. You could just Sinister Shadow Game send this, or Squamata get you into this, and then be able to like turn something off, which is pretty solid, I think. So I think adding it, and also you got to keep in mind that Ariel's a hard once return. So you Ariel your opponent once. If you have another way to send something, but you couldn't find other disruption, like I don't want to send a dragon, doesn't do anything to him now. I already sent Ariel, but I have a send and I can't disrupt him. You now have access to this card, so you do have another disruption throughout the rest of your turn. So I think he comes up huge. I think he's a great utility card for them, but he's not really an engine card, right? Like, he's just disruption. That's really his main purpose. So I think he's probably a 1 of, maybe a 2 of in more like pure trap variants of Shaddolls. But I like him. I'm a big fan. So next, let's move to Hallowed Shaddoll Hollow. This is the other one. Its flip effect reads that you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, send a Shaddolls monster with its same attribute from your extract to the grave, and if you do, banish that monster. That's the main effect of this one, I think. Although the other effect's actually pretty decent. It's removal. It's potentially disruption if you pair it with a Sinister Shadow Games, or if you have the Shaddolls Reincarnation engraved, you can banish it to then flip him, who's would be set ideally face up. And you may be like, Johnny's a high level, are you getting him set? You're just going to use a Wendy to set him. You're going to send Wendy, flip Wendy. Wendy will set him from the deck, and then he's alive, right? If you're able to fuse with Wendy turn 1, you could like fuse into a Winda and then use Wendy to summon this guy out of the deck. face down, and all you would need is a Reincarnation Engrave or a Shadow Games, and you're able to quick flip him on your opponent's turn, which is insane because a lot of people outing a Wendy or Winda, I'm mixing them up. Outing Winda is like, you know what I mean? Like putting a monster on field and like crashing over it a lot of the time. So he gives you the ability to remove that monster, and there's their special summon. Done. So really cool there. Its other effect a lot is when it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can mill cards from the top of your deck equal to the number of different attributes of all monsters on the field. That's pretty good because he's fire, so he probably won't share attributes with other stuff. Oh, actually, he's being sent to grave here, so that's not the best thing, but you'll probably have 1 or 2 attributes. Your opponent could easily have 1 or 2 attributes. You could potentially just be milling 4 cards here. You have a million good mill cards in the deck. Fusions are fine because you get the ability to add them back. Reincarnation is good. Core is good if you're playing it. Any Shaddolls name is good. Even Alistair is not the worst thing in the world, depending on the situation. So I actually think that's effect's also pretty good. That where if you draw him, whereas normally you want him in the deck to summon off of Wendy, if you draw him, just fusing off with him still gets you the ability to potentially mill Squamata, send a Wendy, summon another one from deck. Like, just get free resources that way, and that's actually pretty good. So I think this card's pretty good overall. I do think it's one of those cards that I think will only really see play in the pure Shaddolls variants, or at least like the mainly you play like a bigger Shaddolls core with like trap cards. I think he's better in. I don't think he's as good with like the mixed Shaddolls variants with like Dogmatica and Invoked and stuff. I just don't think he works as well. He's a little too clunky with those other engines in there. But I think in the pure builds, he's actually pretty solid. So also keep in mind his first effect, his flip effect, you have to send a monster with the same attribute, which will trigger all Shaddolls fusions, which is very good to keep in mind because sending any of the regular fusions, just add a Shaddolls spell or trap back from hand. Awesome. Free +1. Great. If you send Apkalone, you search any Shaddolls card from deck and then send it to grave. That gives you a potential trigger from something else in hand or the card you search. So it's either like essentially Foolish Burial, or it's search something you want, Foolish Burial something else from your hand, which is totally really strong. So it depends on what you have to send though, because it does have to match attribute, which is kind of a problem too, because if you play something like Salamangrates, well, you have to be playing what is it, Grista, otherwise you literally can't use this effect against them, and it's just a big body that can potentially help you mill, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Still has some use, but obviously that would be the main use. It kind of makes you want to play stuff like Shekanaga and the other names, but it means weird rogue matchups will be kind of annoying and like kind of hard to do. So just keep that in mind. But mainly lights and darks are going to be what you're dealing with, so we're good with that, right? Construct and Winda and Apkalone. But yeah, that's really what they do overall. I think they're both good cards. Like I said, Hollow's mainly better in the trap variant, which is probably the lesser of the variants. I think right now, like the Invoked with a small Dogmatica engine with Shaddolls seems to be the best variant for Shaddolls. And I'm not talking about like just the Schism in the main and then the 3 extract monsters with Shaddolls in the Dogmatica Invoked variant. I'm talking about like you actually play a decent amount of Shaddolls cards. You play Invoke to get you more fusion cards access, and then you also play like a small Dogmatic engine just to supplement everything else, give you a little more power at the end of the day. Okay, end of the line. Do these cards help Shaddolls go to the next level? No, I don't think so. Right? I think they're both nice. I think Genius has a spot in any Shaddolls variant, and I think Hollow has a spot in pure Shaddolls variants. But I don't think they're changing the game for Shaddolls, right? These do nothing for the engine of Shaddolls. They're just utility, right? Like Hollow's main purpose is the flip effect, and it's slow, but it's pretty powerful. Then you have Genius. He's just utility, getting you on-field negation that you otherwise the deck can lack in certain situations. So I think at the end of the day, I'm sitting here and I go, they're nice and they are a little buff for the deck, but it's not changing the game. I don't think Shaddolls are, oh man, Shaddolls are going to run the format. It's now Shaddolls tier 1, everything else get out of the way. No way. No way. I think the deck's still pretty in the same range with these new cards, but I do think they're nice. and I'm happy and excited to try them out because I'm a fan of Shaddolls. I think they're a fun deck that's really rewarding when you play them well. So I'm still excited. I just don't think they change it. And I wanted to talk about these cards because we're getting close to that set dropping. And I don't know. It's just a cool topic and it's something I want to talk about. But that's going to do it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one in the future. And let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think, what do you think about these new cards? Are they going to change the game for Shaddolls, or do you think they're about still the same? Let me know what you think. I want to hear your guys' thoughts because these are just my ramblings from my basement room like a weirdo. So yeah, thanks for watching again. I'll see you in the next one. Get the hell out of here. Bye.